Hello. What happens when you decide you want to create a whole new border in your garden? I'm Liz Zorab and this is Byther Farm. In our end of year assessment of how everything was growing and going on the farm, I made the decision to move the plants from the flower field up here into the food forest. And the first thing I wanted to do was create a shrubbery all along here. So these are all plants there. Some are deciduous, some are evergreen, but they are going to just carry on growing and getting bigger and bigger each year. So eventually this border will be really floriferous, very attractive, even though at the moment it just looks like a few sticks. I think most of the time we think of shrubs as quite big, mature plants, but actually you can buy them as really quite small plants, and this makes them really affordable. So this Daphne will eventually get to about 3 to 4 feet high and 2 to 3 feet wide, but at this size I'm not spending a fortune. I've got another little one here. This is a beautiful sarcococca, and this is going to get about 4 feet high, 4 feet wide. I can afford to buy it like this. I certainly couldn't afford to buy them if I was trying to get big plants. So I started by laying down full lengths of weed suppressing membrane, and this is a heavy duty cornstarch membrane which starts to break down in about 3 years. And to get the best benefit from it, I now also need to cover it in a mulch like a wood chip, which will stop the wind picking it up and taking it away, which is what happened yesterday in 50-mile-an-hour winds. But let's have a look at some of the plants that have gone in here. Actually, before I start showing you the plants, I just want to tell you I didn't plant these. So Niall from Niall Gardens and JB from Naturally JB came to stay and spent the morning putting all of these plants in for me. So I basically had to just cut the holes in the membrane to show them where the plants were going, and they did it all for me. I'm incredibly grateful. So let's start here. This is sarcococca. It's going to have an evergreen mound, and it produces these small creamy white flowers which give off the most incredible fragrance right through the winter. There's a tiny lavender there, which I bought last year from a local garden centre. Unfortunately, I neglected it somewhat, so hopefully that will be okay. And here is a myrtle. It's Myrtus. Now, I'm going to say it's ugly. I will put the name on the screen. And this is a Carrier japonica that produces little orange pom-pom flowers. And then moving down, I have a rose here which I'm pretty sure I've grown from a cutting. So this is going to be a bit of a surprise because I've got absolutely no idea what it is. And it might be that I will need to move it if this turns out to be a climber. So we'll watch that over the next year and see what that is. Back here is a Catinus Royal Purple, and that is otherwise known as a smoke bush, and it's going to have deep purple leaves and then either pink or white frothy tiny flowers, and it's going to fill this space eventually. And here is a rose. These are one of the roses that I bought before we moved here. So I bought a whole load of roses and stuffed them in a pot. And this one is called Precious Amber. So it's one of the series that I bought that have got apricot and pale peachy colours, which will appear as a theme. In April 2023, my new book, The Seasoned Gardener, will be published. I can't tell you how excited I am that this is on its way. It's been a long time in the making, and hopefully you will really enjoy it. The Seasoned Gardener is a celebration of the seasonal changes of the food, of our environment, and the whole rhythm and process of the gardening year. And if you'd like a signed copy of my book, head over to my website bytherfarm.com/books, and they can be posted worldwide. Spaced out along the border at about 24-25 feet apart, so that's about 8 metres. I've put in a series of cherry trees, and this is Prunus cansan, and it will have a sort of very nice canopy of pale pink flowers in future years. I don't think we're going to get any flowers this year, but hopefully next year we'll start seeing a few flowers on it. And then at the front here is a Mahonia, and I bought this because I was inspired by something I saw, I think possibly on Gardener's World, where they were talking about Mahonias, which I always think of as really prickly, and this is a soft-leafed one, so there's no spikes on it, but again it will produce those lovely yellow flowers during the winter and add fragrance. And that's one of the other themes across this border. I'm looking for colour and flowers for the winter. Down the full length of the border, between the border and the fence, there is an area that it hasn't got any weed suppressing membrane on it at the moment, but it will have. So last year I planted a hornbeam hedge right along the edge here, and it struggled a bit competing with the weeds, so I've decided to put down some more of the weed suppressing membrane from the edge of the border going right to underneath this fence, which will give that hedge a chance to really grow this year without any competition. And this poor old plant has been roughing it in a pot for a year, so it's a formium, and my hope is that it will, now it's in the ground, will pick up, send up lots of new leaves, and will fill this area with its kind of spikiness as a nice contrast to some of the other plants, the shapes and the leaf forms that we've got going here. So this tiny little Hypericum actually came from our old house as a little seedling, but here's one of the bought-in Daphnes. It's not huge, but hopefully it will be wonderful in years to come. At the front there is a small rose taken from a cutting from a friend's house. So thank you, Natasha, for that. So she took that cutting after watching my how to take rose cuttings video. It's a variety called For Your Eyes Only, and I absolutely love it. At the front here is another Sarcococca, but that is a red something variety. I'll leave the name on the screen. And at the back here is a witch hazel that has got a beautifully dark red flower to it, and will also provide some intense fragrance in midwinter. At the front there is another little Hypericum, again a seed from our last house, and this is a hydrangea. It's a variety called Vanilla Fraise Rene, and I still don't know how to say it properly, but I bought this plant on a trip to Wisley, and when I went and I filmed the hydrangeas all out in flower, and it completely inspired me to have one of these at home. It's a Vanilla Fraise Rene, and I'll put the name up on the screen, and it's the softest creamy colour, and the centre of each flower is pink, and then the sepals are flushed pink too. It makes an absolute statement as you're walking up the hill. All you can see is this a colour, and it just draws your eye to it. So bought from the Wisley shop and lovingly brought back here. Here we have a dogwood, a cornus, and this is being grown for these amazingly intense coloured stems. So I'm about to cut this right down to encourage loads of new growth. It will put out lots of lovely growth, lots of leaves, and then when they drop in the winter we'll have an abundance of these dark red stems. So at the front there is a Daphne, which again is going to give us winter interest. Here is a small rose. Check the label so I tell you the right thing. So this is the Poet's Wife. It's a David Austin rose, and it's a rich but clear buttery yellow. I really like this rose. It came out and produced a couple of flowers last year, and I was so excited by them. And it will get quite big, and it is going to encroach out the front of the border, but I'm okay with that. And here is another of the cherry kansan trees, which will over time develop a lovely canopy. And moving on, there's another of the witch hazels. So I'm trying to repeat things. Rather than clumping them together, I'm going to do repeats of them, which will take the eye down the border and also will encourage us to go further down that end and explore a bit more. And here is another of the Mahonia, and the label kindly tells me it's called Soft Caress, and I've got to say it's really makes you want to touch it. It's just has this lovely inviting look and feel. And because I've got the yellow there and an evergreen plant and then the witch hazel here with its lovely red flowers, here I have got an elderberry, and it's black lace, so it's got these very dark purple, almost black leaves. I think it produces like tiny little pink flowers, and that will fill this space fairly quickly. But it's got the yellow in front there, and then again here is another contrasting plant. This is a rose called my Vita or my Veta, and it's got like these dark cerise, really in your face flowers. And I thought when you're that side looking down this way, the vibrant pink against the very dark leaves would look superb. And this rose is called Summer Memories, and it has peachy buds which then open to kind of quite a full creamy white flower. I love this. Actually, I love all the plants that I've chosen here, but I particularly like the roses. I've got another Daphne here, again for winter colour and fragrance. And here is a Spirea. It's a big old chunk of plant, and this was given to me by my friend Jane. Last time she visited, she bought this in an enormous pot, carried it on the train for me. So I'm really pleased to have this, and it won't take very long for that to fill quite a large space. I can't remember whether that's a pink or a white flower, and whichever it is, I'm going to be really happy with it. And then here is, yes, another rose. This one's called Macmillan Nurse, and has, I think it's got yellow fading to cream, or maybe it's cream that get deeper yellow as time goes on. Either way, I really like it. And here is another of the cherry trees to continue that theme right across the border. At the front here are a couple more hypericums, which were the seedlings I brought with us from our home in Monmouthshire. I just had a big pot that I'd put lots of tiny seedlings in, and they've grown on for nearly 2 years now. Very much restricted in size because of being in a pot, but now hopefully that they are in the ground, they'll really start bushing out. And this is a viburnum, and I'm pretty sure it's a variety called Snowball, and it produces these very beautiful white, creamy white clusters of flowers in like a big pom-pom, actually just like a snowball. This is a new plant to me, so I'm going to read out what it's called. Physocarpus Lady Red. And I chose it because it has quite large, deep red leaves. And it probably has flowers as well, but it was the leaf colour that I really wanted here. And I wanted it as a foil to the viburnum. And it will also be a foil to the other plants behind me, just so we've got that kind of mix match and juxtaposition of colour, leaf shape and that sort of thing. Here is not planted. This is a tub of, there's 4 different roses in here, but I'm pretty sure a couple of these are climbers, so I am going to wait one more season till I start seeing their growth habit before I separate them out and actually get them into the ground. And this little shrub here, just about to come into flower, it's a forsythia, and yet again was a cutting that came from my friend Jane. It was rooted by the time she brought it to me. I'm very happy to have that with that bright splash of colour in early spring. And again, another of the Mahonia, with the soft caress, the soft leaves. And again, so I've got the two yellow, the yellow of the Mahonia will be through the winter, and then the yellow of the Forsythia will come in spring. And at the front there is one more Hypericum, yet again a yellow flower, but later in the year. And here is another of the Prunus Kanzan, which will go up and produce a lovely canopy. This lovely little buddleia won't stay little. It was another gift from my friend Jane. I wanted a large white buddleia for the garden, so she brought this in a pot. At the moment it's just sitting in the shrubbery, on the shrubbery, to try and hold it down because it's so windy across here. But eventually I'll be planting it elsewhere in the food forest. So here is another container of herbaceous perennials. They're not going to be here, they're just holding this down. But oh, look at this. So I'm so pleased with this. This is a Mahonia, and I took a cutting of this from my neighbour's garden in our previous home when I made a video about how to take different types of cuttings. So that's now secured, and when I put this into the compost, I'm going to put it all the way in so that this cutting here is level with the top of the soil. It has rooted, it is growing, and it's now here in the shrubbery. I'm so pleased. And then this section is half the width of the rest of it, because I want it narrower here to make space for things that are going to be happening on that side, which I'll tell you about at a later time. So over there is a white lilac, a syringa. I absolutely love lilacs. They have interest kind of almost all year round. So from late winter, early spring, they produce these beautiful little buds. These are just like little mini parcels of potential and promise of something wonderful at a later date. And then they produce these lovely heart-shaped leaves. And then they're going to have these wonderful sort of almost panicles of flowers. Although it might just look like a few twiggy bits now, for me, this is a really exciting plant. I bought it at Aberglasney Gardens last month, so I'm very pleased to have that. So this is a Hamamelis mollis. It's a kind of the one that we all know. It's a yellow flower that's kind of got little gnarly, fingery petals on its flower. And then a couple more of the Hypericum here, and another of the cherry trees. So that's the last in the row of the cherry trees. Three more of the Hypericums, and another of the cornus with this beautiful red stem. And just at the end here, the last plant here is yet another of the witch hazels. So this really hasn't been a cheap project, but I have saved an awful lot of money by taking a lot of my own cuttings, whether those are small shrubs or climbers that will be going in. Every plant that I can propagate to add to my border has saved some money. So if you want to find out more about how to propagate your own plants, I'll leave a link on the screen, and if you click on that, it'll take you straight through to that video.